A bit over 2 years in the making and the wheels are turning under a giant-sized engineering job. On the roll from a work site the size of a couple of football fields at Kooragang Island, the 1,200-tonne West Tuna topside module is due to be loaded onto a barge within the next 24 hours. Along with a smaller platform, the Brim B, it's Esso and BHP's latest venture into tapping rich oil and gas reserves under Bass Strait. The giant steel structures will provide the living and working decks of the rigs, which will stand up to 35 storeys high on tall concrete pillars built at Port Kembla.
The whole project is a series of firsts, but yes, come later this week or possibly over the weekend, the module behind me will be lifted by the world's largest cranes on top of the concrete bases that have been built down in Port Kembla. So yes, it's just another one of the firsts in the project.
Once joined up, the rigs will be towed out to Bass Strait and settled on the seabed, where they should be producing oil by late this year. Much of the job now depends on weather conditions and tides. Over the next 6 weeks, Newcastle will see a procession of heavy lift barges and giant modules heading south. Andrew Lobb, NBN News. Top-heavy staffing levels, maintenance of public buildings such as a museum and art gallery are considered by the council to be major drains on dwindling cash reserves.
Well, there's a whole list of strategies that we'll deal with tonight, and they range from some asset sales. We'll look at some reductions in staff numbers by attrition. I'd just like to ensure everyone that there be no retrenchments. It's purely by attrition.
Heavy earth moving and road building equipment may be sold. Parking meters could be reintroduced. Fees on overdue rates and childcare increased.
There is a point where you have to say we have to maintain our existing assets, and we're now at the point where we can't afford to maintain all our assets. We need to dispose of some and reduce some of the services.
While conceding cost cuts are necessary, the General Manager is confident the city is not in a cash crisis.
We're a reasonably well-heeled council. But we need to address the issues right now, and the issues are that we can't afford to maintain all the assets that we have. We have to do some cutting.
Today, volunteers have been taking calls on the Port Arthur killings, helping others over their worries in a violent world. Lifeline has provided a social safety net for the past 30 years, counselling victims of domestic violence, sexual abuse, others on the verge of suicide. The self-funded organisation celebrates its milestone this week, but its greatest rewards come from the lives its volunteers have helped change for the better.
The original concept is still with us, and that concept involves primarily us being here to listen to people and to help them solve their own problems. And the service has certainly grown in that 30 years from one centre in Sydney to 41 centres throughout Australia now.
At a function tonight, a special tribute will be paid to a mainstay of the organisation, Noel Cathcart. A former director, Mr Cathcart, retiring after a bout of bad health. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
Like all young boxers, Lance Hobson was relentless in the pursuit of success, seizing upon every chance.
You can just sit there and wait all your life for an opportunity, but when one knocks on your door, you got to go for it, mate.
Last night it appeared that attitude would carry him to another professional victory. But what happened in the 6th round stunned even the most ardent supporters of boxing. There was also disbelief from some of the sport's heavyweights.
I've been in his corner from time to time, and he's a great little fella, and he was an asset to the sport of boxing. And
yeah, he's a champion kid, Lance. In recent years we've had Michael Watson get hurt and then lately Gerald McClellan, but it doesn't really hit home until it happens to someone you know.
And someone who knew a young Hobson better than most was Ron Short. Short was one of several coaches who guided Hobson round the ring at the Newcastle Police Citizens Youth Club.
He was dedicated, and that was the main thing. A lot of boys come and go and good talent, and they walk out the door and not interested. You know, you see some good talent walk out, but he had the talent and he just wanted to do it, and that's what he enjoyed.
After a successful amateur career which included junior and senior titles, Hobson turned professional. The 23-year-old's professional career was interrupted by a work-related injury which kept him out of the ring for 2 years. Tragically, last night was just his second bout on the comeback trail. His parents and coach Wal Bentley remain by his side in Melbourne, where the fight continues, this time for his life. Paul Gregg, NBN News. Like all young boxers, Lance Hobson was relentless in the pursuit of success, seizing upon every chance.
You can just sit there and wait all your life for an opportunity, but when one knocks on your door, you got to go for it, mate.
Last night it appeared that attitude would carry him to another professional victory. But what happened in the 6th round stunned even the most ardent supporters of boxing.
That fight even.
Well, we just can't believe it. You know, he's been a good boxer. Lance has represented Newcastle for the last 15 years.
There was also disbelief from some of the sport's heavyweights.
I've been in his corner from time to time, and you know, he's a great little fella, and he was an asset to the sport of boxing.
And someone who knew a young Hobson better than most was Ron Short. Short was one of several coaches who guided Hobson round the ring at the Newcastle Police Citizens Youth Club.
He was dedicated, and that was the main thing. A lot of boys come and go and good talent, and they walk out the door and not interested. You know, you see some good talent walk out, but he had the talent and he just wanted to do it, and that's what he enjoyed.
After a successful amateur career which included junior and senior titles, Hobson turned professional. The 23-year-old's professional career was interrupted by a work-related injury which kept him out of the ring for 2 years. Tragically, last night was just his second bout on the comeback trail. His parents and coach Wal Bentley remain by his side in Melbourne, where the fight continues, this time for his life.
It's not every day a city gains another beach, but that's effectively what's happened with Hunter Water giving Burwood Beach between Merriweather and Dudley back to the people.
We can now actually formally open it and people can use it as they wish.
Not so long ago, the beach was an embarrassing sore for the Water Board. For 60 years, it dumped untreated sewage into the surf, leaving surfers and environmentalists appalled.
The whole beach is just covered in sewage, raw, most of the time. Solid bits, just filthy.
But new technology in a 1.5 kilometre pipe which dumps the effluent out to sea has given Burwood a new lease of life. Hunter Water has now given control of the area over to national parks. Burwood will not be patrolled, so beachgoers must still take care. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Two years ago, John Waters was on stage at Newcastle's Civic Theatre in the role of John Lennon. Looking Through a Glass Onion received rave reviews wherever it played and is now set for a return season. This time, Waters has stepped back from the limelight to make way for Jeremy Stanford, who says the role of the effervescent Lennon is a major challenge. John Waters is directing him through the show, helping to capture the essence that was John Lennon.
There's the classic thing of a video of him when he sang Imagine, you know, and he, between the things he'd chew. He had chewing gum, you know. So that might be something that I use in the show, just as like, oh yeah, that's right, he did that, didn't he? And
taking a back seat has not dampened Waters' enthusiasm for the production. He says the John Lennon story is a timeless tale that has united generations.
And there's a lot about the 60s and what happened during those years that remains a bit of an enigma to the children of that 60s generation. And they tend to come out of the show you know, with a better feeling, better vibe for what was actually going on at that time.
The show opens in Newcastle next month. Amanda Bolger, NBN News. These future teachers are approaching their career in a revolutionary way. Mayfield West Demonstration School is taking more than 600 student teachers into its classrooms to introduce them to all aspects of teaching, not just the basics.
So how a day runs, how collecting money in the morning and marking the roll in the morning, and a child who hasn't ordered their lunch in the morning is all a part of education, as well as teaching a mathematics lesson or an English lesson, and that's all critical to their understanding of what education is really about.
Margaret White says day-to-day teaching is a vital part of education training, and this kind of program gives university students an early insight into their chosen profession.
We hope that they will say, yes, this is for me, but if indeed they see that in the whole day that that's not the kind of thing that they believed education was about for children, that they can make a choice and not waste a whole 4 years before they make the decision not to teach.
A mixture of hands-on work as well as lectures and workshops is used to inspire the new age group. So far, it's been given the thumbs up.
It's pretty good because it gives a little bit of hands-on experience, and it's good to see how the class actually functions and that.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News. While it may look a little confused, it's guaranteed that on opening night these routines will be nothing short of perfection. Today was the first serious rehearsal as students from across the region came together. Up until now, the schools were practising in individual groups. The Starstruck Spectacular features dancing and singing as well as sign language singing. One of the biggest tasks is organising all the students on stage at the one time for the grand finale.
We like to think that ours is a happy show. There's no competition involved in Starstruck at all. It's a very much a show of everybody working together, everybody knowing what everyone else is doing and being cooperative. So that's what we think is special about our show.
The production is a popular alternative to everyday classes.
So all of this is part of what the children do in school as part of their work in the performing arts, so that it's not really an extra or something that we're taking them away from their schoolwork.
Students will take to the stage for 5 performances early next month, with more than 11,000 of 19,000 tickets already sold out.
Intensity has been the word of the week at the Falcons training sessions. The team has crumbled twice under defensive pressure this year, a trait the Falcons are keen to leave behind against Illawarra on Saturday. But the Hawks already have a pre-season win over the Falcons, and Illawarra is deadly at home.
You know, Andre Lafleur's playing great basketball. They have a new import in Marcus Timmins, who's averaging about 25 points a game, and Matt Zorner, who's sort of been around for a little while but now is starting to get the time he probably deserves, and he's playing very well, averaging 15 points and 7 rebounds.
A lot will depend on American import David Van Dyke, who has just started to show the form that won him a singlet at the Falcons.
There's a lot of pressure on David early. He wasn't performing probably to his best of his ability, but he's worked extremely hard, especially over the last month or so, and I think it's starting to show. And we always had faith that he'd come through, and we stuck with him, and he's really starting to repay it.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Also to be collected after the presentation. Before we go any further...
The City Council for Heritage Week 9...
Ready for April isn't bad, is it?
David, we're here. First of all, thank you to Rovers coaches for sponsoring.
It was black ties and thank you speeches at the Cessnock Town Hall when local tourism operators vied for the honours in 24 categories.
The winner for the Rover Coaches Award for major festivals and special events is presented to Surffest 95.
In other awards, Maitland's Steamfest made it into the Hall of Fame for a decade of drawing crowds to the Hunter, while Rafferty's Resort at Cam's Wharf was recognised in the project development section. In the ecotourism category, the winner was the Eagle Reach Resort in the Patterson Valley. The top winery was judged to be the Port Stephens Winery. And in the superior accommodation section, Newcastle's Esplanade Hotel topped the bunch. Life isn't easy for Mark Higgins. He's completely blind and seriously hearing impaired. But with a go-get-em attitude, the 30-year-old this year decided to tackle university, starting a Bachelor of Arts degree 2 months ago. But yesterday, Mark's life was turned upside down by thieves. He left his backpack outside a bathroom, and when he came out a few minutes later, it was gone. Its contents included his only spare hearing aid worth $1,000, meaning if his current one breaks, he won't even be able to communicate with his guide dog.
Well, I guess I don't go anywhere. I have to stay at home or use taxis to get around.
But the story gets worse. The bag also contained a portable note-taker worth more than $4,000 and Braille textbooks Mark had received only an hour before. Also gone is his transmitter system used to hear lectures. All up, he's nearly $10,000 out of pocket and can't go on with his studies. While Mark could be bitter about the theft, he's learnt the hard way not to let life get him down.
I'm not interested in prosecution. I just want my stuff returned to me so that I can get on with my life.
The backpack was large and purple with waist straps. If anyone has information, they're asked to phone the University or Charlestown Police. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
The 40,000 tonnes of fertiliser has been stranded in Newcastle since last Friday. It was quarantined after wheat was found in the hold. Further investigations resulting in a complete ban on the ship being unloaded in Australia.
There is a problem in the United States, a disease called carnal bunt, which is not in Australia, and there is a risk that any grain importation may bring carnal bunt into Australia. so therefore AQUIS have quarantined the vessel.
The company that was to receive the shipment says the ban will have no effect on its ability to meet strong pre-winter demand.
We're looking elsewhere overseas to try and get further fertiliser. In the meantime though, we've brought our shipping programs forward and we don't feel that there'll be any problems with supplying.
In a bid to prevent a similar incident, Highfert has sent a shipping surveyor to the United States to inspect shipments before they leave. The future of the quarantined cargo is less certain, with insurers to decide its fate. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
There's hope for democracy yet. Apathy and complacency about how local government and the country is run are being chased out by new school curriculum, which brings civic responsibility to the classroom. Council officers visit schools trying to explain the roles of local government, and school children, in this case class captains from around the region, are invited to occupy, even if briefly, the seats of decision makers. Meanwhile, also helping to foster cultural development in the city, one very happy artist, John Morris, accepted a $2,500 cheque from the council for his painting which won at this year's Newcastle Regional Show. A traveller and teacher who calls Newcastle home, John Morris commended the city and its efforts to promote the arts.
It's a big enough prize to be able to offset a bit of studio rent and buy some materials and maybe even do a bit of travelling and see some work that you wouldn't be able to see, or landscapes that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise.
Last year Adamstown finished second last, was relegated then reinstated and lost several players to the Breakers. Despite the odds, the team has emerged as a force in the Super League and can become the first team to qualify for the grand final at home on Sunday.
We've had 3 wins in a row now and it's 1 game to go. We win that game, we're guaranteed, and we've been putting a little bit extra in training and we're fairly confident.
If successful, Rosebud's opponents in the decider will be determined over the next 3 months, as this year's season has been split into 2, with the winner of each half earning a spot in the grand final. Locally, there's 1 game tomorrow and 4 on Sunday, with Maitland hopeful of upsetting the Eagles. Australia's richest demolition derby will be contested at the Motordrome tomorrow night. 73 cars will take part in the $10,000 event, weather permitting. From demolition to local derby, with Charlestown and the Newcastle Flyers confronting each other for the first time this year in the Inter-District Netball. And around 1,000 triathletes will contest the State Club Championships at Nelson Bay tomorrow. The race starts at 2 p.m. and includes a 1,000 metre swim, 30k cycle and 8-kilometre run.
3-month-old Dane Aidan Grierson was taken to Port Macquarie Base Hospital on June 28 last year. The boy had skull fractures and multiple bruising to his body. Doctors could not revive him. Today in Newcastle's Supreme Court, the child's mother, Helen Alexander Grierson, pleaded not guilty to murder but guilty to manslaughter. Detectives from Port Macquarie tendered a police fact sheet to the court in which Grierson allegedly admitted to throwing her child across the lounge room and hitting the wall with considerable force. Before the court today, a consultant psychiatrist, Dr. Olva Nielsen, said that Grierson had a severe personality disorder. He said having a child would have contributed to her depression. But Dr. Nielsen said postnatal depression was only one factor. He said it was too simplistic to say all the causes of depression were due to that. The court heard that Grierson had been taking Valium at the time with doses many times above what would have been medically advised. The hearing was adjourned to Wednesday. The 29-year-old mother was refused bail. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
It's a familiar sight at the University of Newcastle, a full campus car park. It's been a long-running fight which led to the university handing over the collection of parking fines to the police.
People have been outraged at the cost of the fines because most of the fines have increased from $15 to $55 because the collection's been handed over to the Police Infringement Processing Bureau.
John Gallop from the Student Association says the situation is ridiculous. While he concedes there are spaces not being used, it's because of their remoteness. Students have a 2.5 kilometre walk from this area to the Union Building. The university is considering a number of long-term options, but there's a little comfort to present-day students.
We need to look at the option of multi-storey car parking. One of the things that is bound to be considered further is the matter of parking fees. And the experience of most other universities when a parking fee is introduced is that the demand for parking drops off quite considerably.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News. More than 300 principals from across the state today heard different ways to explore issues in the classroom and how to tackle the challenges encountered in the school environment. According to Dr. Charles Burford from the Australian Catholic University, one of the most important issues is developing faith.
To keep focused in terms of what is critical to us as a society and yet not to offend in terms of the nature of the diversity of our society.
He says the education system has reached a checkpoint.
It's moving into a more devolved system of community with the school and the parishes and the people within those organisations taking more responsibility for what happens in the school.
Dr. Burford agrees the damning allegations at the Catholic Church have been felt throughout the school system.
I think it certainly does. I think it certainly goes to the very heart of what we I suppose take pride in. But as members of the community, I think we feel hurt and we feel a sense of loss.
After sitting down to hours of discussions with Industrial Relations Minister Peter Reith, ACTU Assistant Secretary Tim Pallas is convinced the coalition is out to bury the union movement.
It is a change of a magnitude that this country has never seen before in terms of the way that trade unions will organise and operate, and also it's a profound change in the way that the whole bargaining processes will be controlled.
The government is likely to put its proposed legislation to Parliament by the end of the month. The ACTU is hoping to enlist the support of the Greens and Democrats to block the bill.
Bottom line is, the way they want to have workplace relations regulated, the coalition government, is they want the employer preferably to deal with workers one-on-one. And what we are seeing put in place are things like encouraging higher productivity and a more flexible labour market. Now that's probably okay, but there's nothing in there that talks about looking after the livelihood and welfare of working people. So you've got one side of the equation and not the other.
According to Mr Pallas, the government's pre-election policy platform that claimed no worker will be worse off, that workers will enjoy freedom of choice and that current agreements would be respected is see-through.
Now all of those promises are going to be broken, and broken quite dramatically.
Surplus to government requirements, this 15-hectare site at Kooragang is soon to start a productive new life. Public Works Minister Carl Scully today announced its sale for $2.1 million to the Cargill Australia company.
We've got a good price for the block of land, but it's not just the sale, it's also industry coming to Newcastle, creating jobs.
Cargill is to build a $28 million vegetable oilseed extraction plant on the land. Australian farmers are increasingly turning to oilseed crops like soybeans, canola and sunflowers to be converted into oil and protein meal. The plant will ultimately process as many as 1,000 tonnes of vegetable oilseeds a day. The location here at the Port of Newcastle means that output can quickly be distributed to markets both at home and overseas. With start-up assistance from the government, the venture will provide 35 full-time jobs, generating millions for the local and national economy.
This is a vibrant, important region in New South Wales, and the government's committed to doing what it can to provide employment opportunities. And this is a win-win situation.
Meanwhile, the Public Works Department is soon to call tenders for some of the final works of the long-running Hunter Sewerage project. The $300 million scheme should be substantially completed next year, 2 years ahead of schedule.